I love these guys. You know, that's your universal. I have metric and standard on these bad boys. Show me that, don't look in my box. Show me that you're not a mechanic. Or tell me you're not a mechanic, but how do you say that? Tell me you're not a mechanic. Show me you're not a mechanic. What's the term? Show me, but tell me, but show me. But without show. Tell me you're not a mechanic, but don't tell me you're not a mechanic. Wait, no, fuck it, who cares? We'll fuck it all. Nailed it. All right. We need to do a brief update and a check-in. Let's call it a check-in on the Frontier and kind of get you guys, I know there's people on both the Terra Crew channel and our channel that have kind of been like, well, what's up with the Frontier? Where's the Frontier? What's going on with the Frontier? And I wanted to get you guys up to speed on that and kind of behind the scenes and the logistics on that stuff to bring us up to speed. Probably need to do a little story mode on this where I can just tell you guys some of my history to tie it in, because I think some of it reflects into this very project. I grew up an only child. I never met my dad. My biological father was from Australia. That's a whole nother thing, but bottom line is I was born into having, like, I had a stepdad, but he was a lot older, and my mom was my primary parent. So she, you know, taught me how to ride dirt bikes. She had a CR250, and she used to do everything dad related. She'd put 5 BMX bikes in the back of her Grand Marquis and take us BMX racing, and she just did everything. And being an only child, I, you know, wasn't spoiled, but I got a lot of stuff. I think a lot of care and love, and part of that goes to Pegasus hobbies and going to get model cars. I used to love buying like scale model cars and painting them and putting them together. But what I used to love more is I would like to go in there and like I'd be like, well, I want to get 2 because I want to take the engine or the, you know, the wheel package or this and these components, and I want to put them into this one. And I'd always like walk out of there with 2. And what would happen is, left to my own devices, I would start these big intricate projects and modify these cars instead of just sticking with the course and building one complete model. I would need to modify it and want to add this and want to add that. And what happened, the habit pattern, and I don't know how psychological it was or why, is I would take these cars and I would get them to like 60 to 80%, and then I'd never finish them. And I would end up with like these half-finished, really cool looking half-finished projects or 3/4 finished projects all like on a shelf. And then I'd have these big buckets, these clear totes of like model car, like trees left over, like parts trees, or, you know, little containers with like engine blocks and shocks and all this stuff kind of organized but just not done. And then I'm like, man, am I doing this as an adult? Like this vehicle? Am I sitting here and then I got to this point where it's 75 or 80% done or whatever, and then like I'd hit some kind of psychological block where I like it's programmed into me, and I don't know. Part of the other angle to the Frontier is I signed up to build this thing out. I wanted to finish it for James. I love James. I love him like a brother, and I wanted to. I saw through the years of knowing him with this, like how it was going, and the shops and the people and this and that, and I was never in a position where I could finish it for him or take care of it. Like I committed to doing the interior at one point at Poncho's shop, and then I started working over here in this valley, I guess, and I still like, and then the shop I was at, it was no go. And so now, once I got into my own place here at the studio, I told James, I said, give me the truck, I'm going to finish it at all costs. I want to, and if that is a financial cost to me and it takes my time and my resources to help you finish this, I'm going to do that, because when I die in my grave, I want to know that I helped you finish this thing. And that's where I'm at with James. This is my one thing. It's not like a charity thing, but it's just me helping someone I love finish something that's been like this 10-year thing of just frustration and stress and love and hate and like this challenge. And I want to do everything I can to help him finish this and have that be like this chapter of his life that we either close, or however you want to look at it, or you open, where he's got his frontier and it's back and the final frontier is done. So there's two angles there, and finishing this on my end, it's like a sacrifice and a commitment. And this is the last bit of fabrication and the last round or the final bout of this thing before it goes to powder coat, and then we just do, you know, disassembly, assembly, and goes to wiring, and it's a truck. So I want to kind of just get you guys up to speed. We want to be on track with Terra and make sure that they have, they're able to release and continue on the series. And obviously, you know us for going more in detail with design, and I guess almost like a behind the scenes, if you will. But with this, I think we got, you know, on paper, we have a complete breakdown of everything that needs to be done, estimated hours, all that. And then from there, I take that to whiteboard, where I can visually come in with my guys and I can look at, all right, well, let's digest this. Let's look at this. And, you know, sometimes I'll write down, I'll prioritize, you know, 1, 2, or 3 just on the stuff that needs to happen first on that list. And having that stuff in front of you and visualizing it, and not counting on either a piece of paper, which only gets you so far, or, you know, in your head, which is the most complicated way of doing things. It's like grabbing clouds that are floating in there. So for myself, that whiteboard is crucial on times that require, you know, dedicated, focused work. So let's go look at the whiteboard really quick, and then let's come back. Just quick hits on here. I've kind of delegated the bigger, chunkier work on the Frontier to get done first before we move it into the little details and the plumbing. Right off the bat, new bumper with winch pickup, valence for bumper, redo tilt hood mechanism. I think we're gonna stay there. So that's 1, 2, 3, but those are all kind of a chunked thing. And that's what we'll go into covering. We're gonna cover 3 different things today on the Frontier just to get it up to speed. We'll go from there. You gotta think about some builds, and I guess in general, you'd think about builds where you want to make things easy or easier for serviceability. But for a James, it's especially something to consider. That's why we're going, sounding not straight. That's why we're going with, okay. Dude, it's so askew. We're not gonna get a win off that one. No, okay. With James, it's important to navigate something. I mean, obviously he has, this is what you, it's a high-end Prerunner. It's got all big parts. It has stuff that requires service, but we've done the best to kind of like stress putting the thing away wet. That's why like doing like a full powder coat on the chassis, making things where it's easy. I mean, obviously it can come here or it can go down the Eisenhower's even to get like a prep done on it once it's complete, but just the general cleanup on this thing, like make it easy to lift the hood, make it easy to hose the thing out, or, you know, pressure wash it and not have to kind of chase the rust or anything like that. So applying that to different parts of the car is important. And one thing we talked about is having this tilt hood be easier. It had a mechanism on here that was previously built where it was, and it's not attached now, it's just kind of hanging out. But this hood had like a lot of times when people build a flip forward hood or one piece or whatever you want to call this, their front bonnet, you know, that thing it has to do something weird to clear the bumper, or the bumper has to be really inset. So when this dives down, it doesn't collide and crash with your main bumper tube. There's ways around this, and if you go back to like the Super Crew Sean update episode on his black F-150, same kind of mechanism we're gonna build into this. But before we do that, just to talk about what this was, it had like heim joint linkage here. It had some spooky shit like this under here, where you'd loosen the hood pins, and then you have to shuffle the hood off of the pins. So it's two people no matter what, one person on each side, and then it would like lift and then like, and it just did this really weird thing. And then when it came out, it had like a bungee to stop it, but the real limit strap was just the fiberglass on the bumper tube. When I think about this, the build intention here, like the original intention for the end result of this, is for James to be holding a kid, because he's got, you know, his soccer team of kids, where he can kind of get this off, and then this thing can be on, you know, gas strut or air strut, and it'll go up, and it'll be one smooth mechanism that makes it easy for him to service. It's just it has to be like that. So with that, there's challenges that we're going to do right now. We're just constructing the bumper, but we're going to use some of the frame that's in here that you know, plots some of the fender or the fender washer and the attachments, and goes up to the hood pins, so we can navigate the waters where that's still going to be part of it, and then we can just adjust the actual mechanism here and then tab it for the struts. So that's one update we're working on. But before we do that, we need to address the bumper. Being back on this, we needed to do the bumper first. Obviously, that's our example of what we had. Not anything terribly wrong with that. Just for what we're going for, we needed a revision. So running this thing, also like running a valence, that bumper was a, you know, maybe like a 7/8 span or a 3/4 span on the actual front clip. So your valence material would end like prematurely. And just putting something stout up here made a lot of sense. The addition that you see here is not a permanent fixture. This can kind of be like his race program, or if he's running like on a course with multiple dudes or whatever, this can go in as a bolt-on attachment that can come off easy. And we can kind of dive into this, but first this bumper is all 2-inch. It's got nice blends. It's got a pretty good transition here with the cap. And it's a bolt-in. This used to be a slip bumper. The tubes here are the male portion, and then the female portion where it would slip would be on the chassis. You know, it would go like that. And then there was just a stitch weld to hold it together. So when you wanted to take the bumper off, you had to get a cutoff wheel and cut the stitch weld and then hammer the thing out. Being powder coated and being a little easier to service, made more sense to put tube connectors in there. So we got everything prepped and put together to put 2-inch tube connectors into those, which is also a 2-inch made for the bulkhead, so it kind of just sprawls out. The other thing we adjusted, you can see, is like the parallels here. Those tubes were parallel, and what we did is we knew we wanted to plot a pusher into this thing, or design and engineer a pusher into the outside of the primary tube. So we took that span where it would usually be parallel here, and we kicked it outboard to support the structure here. Now, this is obviously in its really rough stages of construction here, but you can kind of see what's going on. It's very unorthodox. It has 3 pickups, so there'll be a boss that's slipped into this primary tube. Boss meaning like a machined thicker stock of bar that'll have a 1/2-inch hole in it, and that'll live in the bumper. And then this will be one structure. This is just long, but it'll get cut and welded, and you'll have a bolt in there, and it'll capture with a nut on the backside of the bumper. And then these chingaderas that are just diving into here kind of crazy, they're gonna have a big register in here with a bolt that drops straight in. So what's nice is not having, you know, sometimes with like things that take damage, like a pusher or like a race bumper, when you're denting these, any kind of impact that's upsetting the surface of this thing is gonna upset the pivots. So leaving this with, you know, just a traditional bolt, like a capture bolt and nut, is the way to get these things off easier, because when the tube connectors are on stuff like this, and they take like a dent or a ding or something even bigger, it's so crappy to get the tube connectors out of there. Just creates for problems. So this thing will still come out really nice and easy. We'll put some kind of a different coating on here. I don't know if it'll be like a chrome or something, but just see what the rest of the flavor of the car has. So this is in its rough stages. I just wanted to catch up on some things. So bumper still removable, but that'll live there. Push bar or race appointment on the bumper, removable. And then we'll still have the Baja Designs 30. Ting, pong, tong, ting. And that guy's gonna live in here. Something to think about. I can probably just let this live here right now. Something to think about also is if you get in line here and you look at the front, you can see the tray for the radiator is back here. Right where my hand is like the upper corner of the tray of the radiator that's leaned back. There's a limited window here of space for air. I don't think that the tubing is like a huge issue, and even this light is not a huge issue, but I think there should be more. So like I was just talking with my sculptor Mario about the front clip, and we, you know, upon talking, I started to just draw like a really rough shape, and I think we might want to try to tastefully put openings into here just to get more air, because, you know, this shape change here where it starts to waterfall off of the top surface and down towards the front of the grill, there's a lot of real estate here that we can open up to get more flow. And I'd rather just do it now than think like, oh, okay, well, we'll just see how it goes, and then we'll come back and just, if it's a thought where the physics already look like that, just based on experience and how things work and how these motors need to be cooled, we should just do it now and get it over with, and we can just fill this. I think what we'll do, just brainstorming more, this point, you know, where we have the 3 holes in here, can have like stainless mesh, just like we use on everything else. And then in here, we talked about putting like a grill mesh in here, but that's so typical, and I get like that concept, but this will have aluminum trim in here, and it'll also be ducted to the radiator. So that being said, I'd rather have a really nice like visual opening in here where we can just have a frame that goes in front of the radiator and the fins where it has its own mesh. So it's got a protective frame that's laid on the radiator instead of just blocking this whole opening. And then that gives you a really nice sense of depth, and it really gives dimension into the front of this thing instead of just facing it off here. I think it'll be a profound thing. Plus you could set diapers here. You could set bottles, you know, anything, cameras, whatever, in that little shelf, or you could even have food in there. So there's a lot of wins there. Let's move on to the interior and the electronics consoles. So the Truggy update, when we had the bare chassis, and also James's last update, we had these, I'm gonna tie both of those in, but it has to do with upholstery. So obviously James's upper control console here is back from upholstery. I've been working with a new upholstery guy, and you know, the thing is with this stuff, there's still design that's tied into upholstery. So like you can't just, if you have a way you want something to look in your head, sending it off to upholstery is a really murky water situation, because you know, it's better to communicate what you want, so in the end you get what you want, instead of just think that they're going to do what you're expecting or think they're going to do a better job. And I hope I'm wording that right, but I had an idea of what I'd like the stitching to look like, not just on the Truggy stuff, but also on James's just 2 areas in his interior. And that's what we have here. So I actually sent this one, I got it one time, and it had some stuff, some imperfections that just didn't work with what we need. So I had him take it back and redo it. And this is what we got. I mean, it definitely looks like a fucking kind of thing, but it's all Alcantara stitched. It's the same silver stitching as his PRP Alphas that are in the front, and his PRP seats that are in the back as well. And then obviously this cap goes on here. So I'm gonna install this stuff and we'll go look at it inside and kind of talk about it more. This is the look that I'm going for. I have something, and I think that it came from rally cars and American Le Mans Series cars and like a lot of high-end like GT cars that have this like kind of, they call it like a body in white, but it's usually the chassis is completely white on the inside and you know, or different colors, whatever, but it's fully caged road going car, dedicated race vehicle. And then they have like either the stock dash with like Motec in it or something, a derivative of that. And it's, you know, laid down with Alcantara and stitched and stuff. It's like a nice little hit, and it's really for being a functional modification. Some other vehicles you'll see there's like a vinyl or a leather wrap dash, and those look pretty, but for me and design and functional design, I think that there's a lot more to having a suede or Alcantara wrap versus leather or vinyl. And just two real quick things. The reason that they're in race cars is because it doesn't reflect. It doesn't have highlights. Any kind of light source that's coming in is not distracting to anything that's inside the cockpit of that race car. That's the purpose of this. That vinyl or that leather, especially if you put some coating on it or something, you are like, you get highlights off of it. The other thing is, this stuff is really easy to clean. You just blow it off. And with, you know, like a smoother surface, the dust is very obvious. So then if you like grab something or something, you're like, oh my gosh, the dash is so dirty. And this just kind of takes it and then you just blow it away. And plus you can draw stuff with it, which is like the best, you know. You can make all kinds of inappropriate drawings on that stuff or whatever you want. So this is just, it's the contrast thing. So having like exposed controls and like flared holes, you know, we'll have exposed lines. The suppression system will have like its exposed lines, like everything kind of like in this aviation, like underbonnet style with just little appointments for the electronics. You know, we have like our cowl, our display cowl, and then the actual display is floating like I talked about to kind of get some of that heat out and not soak that, and also add like a design element of just space. And then our control, you know, module console here, which is really consistent with the roof line and kind of just draws back and then tapers into the B-pillar in this really nice fashion where it's very easy to manage, and it balances out the car where it's so small and compact in here that it's already like a cockpit. And it's very like you're in this thing and it doesn't feel like you're gonna go get food in it. It feels like you're supposed to really have fun and go fast. So having this stuff, and it's such a small area where your rear occupants and your co-driver can see the controls and they can touch the controls. So you're able to kind of delegate different jobs to people in here with just being able to focus on driving. You know, someone can watch your temps or, you know, if they need to control things, they can hit that without you having to put too much energy into doing it. So we have this upholstered portion back for the car, and we also have the truggy one back. We'll cover that when the truggy starts going together. We'll go and look at what's going on in the back of this thing, which will just be a brief look into another episode that will be dedicated to the rear and the exterior panels on the car. Do you see the rays here? This is one, gosh, that's bold, but this is one of the trucks that has they used to call it like for the bedsides on like a Ranger or something, they'd call it like the trophy truck style bedsides. And really that just means like a bedside with a raise instead of a flat top. Flat top meaning exactly that, like you could have lunch on it or something. This has a very good shape. Fiberworks did a good job on the front of this thing, and it's right. It feels good. It has a lot of lift, and on top of that, this is built to the truck. So when this 40 hits full compression, it's here. It's like up in here. All we did with the front here is we trimmed about 1 3/4 or 2 inches of like the simulated fender flare off of it. But what I'm really showing is the height raise. Like if you think of the belt line here, you know, this is what you call your belt line. And it's, for layman's terms, it's the bottom of the window. It's the window line. And you look at that and you kind of use that as a reference for the plane and how level that is. And then you think about, well, how raised this is. And then that belt line draws all the way through to right about where the headlight is. So there's a considerable raise here. The rear bed sides for this were a flat top. They went right from the belt line and they just rode a flat, nice thing and dropped back into the taillight. And they did have a considerable bulge going out, but they didn't represent the language here and the styling here. And on top of that, when we bumped the thing, and especially when we added some articulation at bump into it, that tire was so past or above sea level, there was no way to make it work. What did we do? We cut a big ass hole in the top of the bedside. That adds for a level of, well, I guess it takes away from a level of structural integrity, and it lends itself into just being a weird shape. And James had asked for, you know, to do some kind of a modification to the bedside to try to get that raise that we needed, and also cover some real estate where it wasn't just like a straight cut from the window, you know, to the tail light, and there was such an open void. So the best way to go about this is to bring someone in that can shape a lot of, let's take a step back, a lot of automotive, well, let's take another step back. All automotive manufacturers use clay sculpting for their design process, every single one. That means that there is a human and a team of people that come in and they sculpt a prototype, or they sculpt 50%, and they usually do like a 1/4 or 1/5 scale, and then they also do a full scale clay sculpt, because there's something about a human forming something and shaping something, and there's something pull that we have. Our eyes are our greatest tool, and there's something about doing that that is still holds up to the technology that we have today. And you can get a good design out of a computer for sure, and you can aero test it. But those fine adjustments that you get from clay, where you can really just, you say, man, what if we just did 4 mil down on this thing? Let's just try that out. It's so efficient with the automotive industry to do that and make those quick adjustments and stand back and look at it. Clay also provides a very hard, dense surface that you can actually put a wrap on, like Studio Silver or something, put a wrap on and see how the highlights and the reflections work. And it also lends to making molds. So I brought in Mario, and Mario's gonna have his own kind of episode or series on this thing and how he does stuff in that process, and we're gonna cover that. But right now we just wanna do a quick recap on where we're at right now with it. And this is our bedside. Keep going. Right off the bat, the truck probably looks really high and gnarly, and the scale of this thing is pretty big, but it's just lifted up for ease of working on it. And like I always say, we lift these things up so we can get under them or just be comfortable. Like you always get a greater result. Same with like welding or something. The more comfortable you are with something, the easier it's going to be for you to do the job and do the job the best you can. So Mario has been in here, putting in the time to really lay out a professional grade designed surface here. Where does this surface go? This surface, we're only gonna do one side, and then we're gonna bring this thing down to Jason McNeil, and he's gonna scan this, and then he's gonna digitally flip it over there. So there is a bedside under here, and we've chopped it and cut it, and you'll see that in the Fab Diaries episode of clay sculpting. But this is now our template. So even the bedside mounts that go into the bolt into the chassis, all this stuff is braced and structured, where we're just gonna take this off, gonna package it, put it in the back of the truck, bring it down to Jason, and then he can pull surfacing off of this thing to the finest detail, period. So there's still some shaping to do on this thing. We opened up the portion that we had here. We had a smaller opening, and It just didn't, when it started to get, like, this is such a greater shape on the rays, and just all of the surfacing on this is so much different than what was here. This little tiny cutout that it had didn't make sense. So we've opened this up a lot and added some shape into it. And it's gonna, again, just like the front of the truck, it's gonna give a feeling of depth and dimension, being able to kind of see in there and see through there at the same time as functionality. So there's obviously going to be an exhaust exit somewhere through here where we can get a wind in. I don't know, like now, since we have shapes here, where that exhaust exit's going to be. We have all the exhaust welded and done all the way up to the X-pipe with a V-band in there. So it's just going to be the one last hit of V-band and saddle off the chassis to bring this thing all the way out from the bedside. What we'll probably want to do, if James wants to run this thing without bedsides on it, like sand style paddles, like just typical Prerunner style, we'll have a separate tip. And that separate tip will be like a party tip, where he can just have it aimed somewhere else where it's not going to be like this crazy thing that's built to exit out of this huge fender. There's also another portion. So there's obviously this raise. This raise goes all the way, now it's spanned, so it's pretty deep. It's at least 18 inches at the sweet spot here, where this kind of goes right to the shocks, and then it goes over to the chassis. So we're getting some enclosure panel with the fiberglass, and then all we have to do is fill in a little tiny void over here. There's a lot of little details in here that are maybe not visible unless you're like told about them, like different plane changes and stuff on the surfacing. Mario, again, we'll tie into the Fab Diaries episode because he's got so much background. His entire career since he was in his early 20s has been a clay sculptor for huge automotive corporations. And he's just a bad dude. So we won't keep going into that. Just some stuff to look at, like I was talking about. This thing starts and it goes into the chassis, and then it draws in right into the kind of the bump zone of the chassis. And what we'll do is we'll get a really nice hit coming out of here, or I can just tie sheet metal, just a small panel, see the tube to here, and this closes the whole thing in. And then you'd like the rock. James has kind of been overly concerned, or just concerned in general, about rocks coming up and getting the back window. I've had that happen once, and I had it happen again just by the chassis moving and it being so close to the back window that it fractured it and popped it. But what we're gonna get here is just shocks and piggyback, and then boom, this whole thing is completely sealed from the underside and the elements, which will be really nice. This is a breakup that's functional, so you can kind of see what we're doing here. We're gonna dig this out, and this, you'll have your opening from the front where like the rear door is, and you'll see like the shocks and the exhaust in there, so you'll have cooling. And then you're also gonna have an exit way, which will be like a really nice, beautiful shape and breakup here, where we'll have another opening that'll be tastefully done. Probably put mesh in here, or we just don't put mesh in any of this stuff and it's just like open. But I think the mesh is a really nice detail, especially for a Prerunner, that it's not just like a dedicated race vehicle. So that's where we're at with this thing in general. We'll kind of talk about what's gonna come next, and then close this thing up, out, close it out, up and around. That's our catch up or our rundown on this thing. Just needed to clear the air as far as what's going on with it or where it's been. It is a sacrifice for me to work on it or have my guys work on it, and it's okay. It's like I said, it's one I'm willing to make, and I'm excited to finish it. Just like we talked about in the beginning, it has more meaning than just another truck or a project. It's a special thing in multiple ways. So as far as the nitty gritty here of what's coming next, we should be back online with the Terra Crew updates as well. Have James come through here. I've been pushing for that. So let's see if we can get somewhere with that. If you guys talk to James or know James, then message him and tell him to get the hell over here and start going again. Give him that motivation, that fire, because we're on that last final bout here. With the front, we're going to package in a winch provision in here. So things to think about next, and when we come back to it, winch mount that'll be on like a military quick release. That thing will live back in the chassis of the truck, but for getting himself out of trouble or spending all day helping other people that are in trouble, we're gonna have that winch go in here. We'll design the thing in a way where the valence material, like the ABS on here, is not affected by the fair lead and is not getting damaged. And we have a pretty cool game plan that I can't wait to share and execute the design. And we'll just start the process back of finishing this thing. We were kind of on a hiatus with it, and logistically, just stuff with the shop, it kind of lost traction. And now we are at this point where we're going, and holding myself accountable to this thing, so we can actually finish and just check this one off and have this be what it's supposed to be. Again, you guys, if you want to get a shirt or something, the merch site still has stuff. I know we're out of aprons. I know the hats need to be restocked, but I think there's still shirts. So if you want one or a Fab Diary shirt, you can go to the site and grab those. Share the page with your friends. Like, comment, subscribe. Have a good Monday. Hello, humans. I'm looking for help. Fabricator positions, not just one person, but 2 people. I'm gonna leave a post up. Everything on that post will be a description of what I'm looking for. You know, primarily hungry, motivated, passionate people. If you guys feel that you meet some of the criteria on there or all of it, contact me directly via email or direct message, and good luck.